Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I'm VB, Velvet Bell Templeman. I am Publishing Director at iTnews, and I'm here with the lovely David Stockdale, Director, of course, at AUSCERT and CISO of University of Queensland. So today, I'm just going to give you a little background on iTnews. I know many of you I've seen over the last couple of days have said to me, I bookmark iTnews, I read it every day, which is really exciting. It's nice for us to know that our traffic is coming from real people that are getting their insights and analysis from us. So we've been doing this for 2 decades, and we know that we're writing stories that matter to enterprise and government technology leaders. And we've earned the trust of this community by interviewing people like yourselves, senior technologists, and we really appreciate it when you come to us and you share your stories. As you guys all know, technology, and especially cybersecurity, is the engine room of every modern organisation. Business and tech leaders tell us that they depend on iTnews not just to stay ahead, but to inform strategy, shape investment, guide policy, and support career growth. While news is our core focus, we've also deepened our commitment to cybersecurity reporting, and our annual State of Security report has become a trusted source for understanding the evolving threat landscape and the forces shaping security investment and practice. We've done this for a number of years now. It's actually on the front page of iTnews currently. You can also go out to our iTnews stand at the front and get a copy of that report. But as I said, I'm joined by David, and he has been central to these conversations, supporting us with interviews for these reports for the last couple of years, and he's contributed to many of the chapters in the report. So today we're just going to cover a few of those topics. David, let's start with data security, which I know is a theme important to your heart. You're passionate about it.
Yes.
Why is data governance still the cornerstone of cybersecurity, especially in an AI context?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, I actually think, VB, it's even more than a cornerstone. I think it actually sits at the very centre. And we think about cybersecurity as almost like a thing on its own. And it's not. You think about, well, what's it for? And you think, well, I think about protecting from adversaries. But what are you protecting? And people then go, well, I'm protecting my infrastructure. Well, you're not really protecting your infrastructure. What you're really protecting is your data. Because that's the thing that matters. We don't read the press and say, oh, somebody got into somebody's server. We read the press and say, somebody got hold of this data and exfiltrated it, and it's got all your personal details in it. Nobody cares about that. So really, data is the very heart of what we do. And good data governance is really about understanding your data, where it is, classifying it correctly, making sure the right controls are. And again, I think yesterday when I stood up and did the opening remarks, I made that analogy about a bunch of children, 5-year-olds, when they play, and I'll use the word football, I'm not going to use soccer, when they're playing football, because I'm English, and they chase after the ball, and they're all chasing a pack, and then they chase them. And I think we're in danger of doing the same thing with AI. That yes, it's great technology, it's another technology layer, but what's it doing? It's actually accessing the data. And what we're really worried about with AI is actually it getting hold of data it shouldn't have. And if it's getting hold of data it shouldn't have, it's why is that happening? Have we given it, or have we not classified it correctly? So really, data and data governance, data is the thing we're bothered about, data governance is the practice that we should be doing. And if you do that, then a lot of your other things are going to fall into place.
And what practical steps can organisations take to protect their data, especially when it comes to the rise of AI-driven threats?
Well, I think it's just what I said, talking about that data governance thing. It's like, I think there's a bit of a dry subject in many ways. And some of my team from UQ are here who worked in that data governance space. And we tried to do a lot of work in trying to get people to understand what it meant, but really starting to think about, we need to invest in that governance process. And I know governance is sometimes a subject that people don't like. They like the tech and they like the exciting stuff, but it's really important. So starting off with a data governance program and going, right, we're going to find our data. We're going to know where it is. We're going to know what it is. We're going to know what we would allow, what we would like to do with it and what we wouldn't like to do with it. And I think those are just very practical things, but that's a data governance program, really.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to identity and access management, which is another chapter in the report. So talk to us through the identity use case at University of Queensland that enables a single identity solution for every stakeholder.
Yeah, I've got to be very careful because one of my colleagues who's actually leading the programs in the audience today. So, and it used to, the identity used to belong to me. And I've had lots of conversations this last few days about identity. And it's in the university context. It's quite complex. It's very complex actually. The problem with the universities in terms of identity is that we treat a person as a person, first and foremost. And that seems like a really obvious thing to do, but often organizations don't do that. They treat them as the role. Now, a person, and there'll be people in this room who have probably have studied at UQ and become an alum. They might still be studying at UQ, doing some postgraduate type studies, and they might work at UQ. And that in our world, that person has all of those roles, or personas as they like to call them these days. And we have them all in one system. And then we've got to try to ensure that that person, we know everything about that person, and then that we know that the appropriate roles so they can do the appropriate things. Mix that in with data governance about what should they be able to access and things. And then it starts to come together that. But it's really about that complexity that you see in universities where we treat everybody a person and then have multiple sort of roles. And sometimes those can be a little bit, they can clash a little bit. So you could have a student who does some teaching, that there's the problem there that they're actually almost a staff member and a student, that sort of thing. Whereas if in a health service, in the health system, if they were a clinician and a patient, they'd be in completely different systems. If they're in the bank, working in the bank, and they're actually a bank of that bank, or a customer of the bank, they're in different systems. Not true in the university world.
Yeah, so it's a really unique setup here.
I think it is, and all the time I've spent in there. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment in migrating our identity to a much more modern solution. But it's taken a long time to see a vendor come along with a solution that would actually match that university's use case.
And you
but
found
we're
one?
seeing that. Yes, we
Oh,
are.
fantastic.
And they're emerging now. They're starting to get it. They're thinking, yes, it is more complex. So don't force your organization into our solution. Our solution should fit your requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a
Brilliant.
novelty in identity world.
Yeah. So another chapter of our report is networking and infrastructure. David, what does it mean to build a defensible network in 2025?
Again, the same colleague is in the room who looks after this, and we work very closely together. Look, the government, the federal government, put out some really good stuff about defensible. ACSC put out some good stuff around that, and it's sort of based on that sort of zero trust principles. And again, we see the vendors using these very hyped up terms like zero trust. But really, what does it come down to? It goes, whatever you're doing, I need to know who you are. I need to keep on checking that. And I'm not going to allow you to move across the network into different applications, different systems, different parts of the network, different data sets, whatever, without knowing who you are and really testing that. And I'm going to test it in different ways depending on where you're coming from as well. So building that network is really about that. It's quite practical, and vendors will help us do that, but you've got to understand it. But it's really, it's really building a network that's actually going to support, it's going to defend you as well as the actual application layer, the authentication on the applications, etc. So it's really multiple controls at multiple levels, and testing all the time.
I have a controversial question for
Go on.
you. So do you think the government is doing enough when it comes to networking and infrastructure
Well,
security?
our next keynote speaker is, you really asked this, I said this yesterday. Look, I said yesterday, I was down at the Department of Home Affairs SOCI Security Critical Infrastructure Conference, and I was really heartened to see how government and industry are really working together to make this country more resilient with that sort of changing geopolitical landscape. Is it doing enough? You can always look at something and think, I could do more. I'm sure that's true. And I think there'll be people who don't think there's enough being done, or it's not the right thing. But I personally believe there's a lot of great work happening, and it is starting to come down into industry, and industry is getting on board. I'm sure it's not perfect, nothing ever is, but I see that working together thing happening, and that collaboration thing happening. And I think that's very heartening.
That's fantastic. That's what we want to see.
Yes.
Thank you so much, David.
pleasure.
So that was just a small insight into a few of the chapters of our State of Security report. David is one of the speakers in the report, but there are a number of other CISOs. Some of you might be in the room, some of them will be your peers. So definitely take a look at it. As I said, you can download that report. It will get it sent to you out the front from iTnews. Just separately, I wanted to touch on something really quickly that might be exciting to some of you. We actually have our iTnews Benchmark Security Awards happening again this year. It was the inaugural awards last October, and I know some of you were actually there as finalists and even winners. It was a really, really fun, exciting night, and it's a chance for you guys to really recognise and celebrate the work that you do. So we will be putting those applications open really soon. Make sure you put yourself forward for your leadership in security or put your peers forward. And thank you so much to AUSCERT for this amazing conference. You guys do a great year every year, and we're so happy to be involved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.